Okay, I'm just going to talk from here and get a shot at the same time. So Kara, you want to go ahead and get started?
I'm Kara Kesters. I am the education coordinator here at Myrtue. Oh, and some of my stuff did not update. So education department, and our goal in the education department is to make sure that we are providing the best educational opportunities for our staff members to increase, obviously, their education, and then that would provide better patient care. So this is the staff members in our department. So I am the education coordinator. Joey is the education assistant. So we are the primary education department. And then I have a whole list of instructors that provide classes, and we'll go through those classes that they provide and who provides them. So the Iowa Board of Nursing does give us a providership. So we just applied for new providership in 2021. We have to do that every 5 years. And so basically they're saying, you guys are doing a good job, you're meeting the standards of what it takes to provide education, and so we can give credit hours to our employees. And nursing needs credit hours, doctors, everybody who is associated with a board needs credit hours to renew their license. So we are able to provide that service to our employees. We actually have some area hospitals that do not have their providership, they have gotten revoked. So we are very lucky to have that and making sure we're meeting those standards. So we have done a bunch of credit hour opportunities. A basic life support is a 2-day course. We do nurse competency days, which are also 2 days, but all of the nurses are required to attend for either a morning or an afternoon of 1 day. We've done a lot of different educations. So OB does one every other month, at least a couple credit hours. They did breastfeeding, we did a Eurosepsis scenario. We have Victoria, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but it's a simulator doll, mannequin, huge life-sized 150-pound doll. And so we are able to do really good opportunities for learning for OB for them. We did a pediatric trauma. We do trauma case studies quarterly, so they review cases that have come through. And then we do PALS, TNCC, ACLS, and NRP. Basically what these all are advanced cardiac for adults, pediatrics, newborns, so they could run a code if a patient needed that level of assistance. So medical staff, they get grand rounds. So we've had, this year, had Iowa Department of Public Health, Dr. Avalucci, Dr. Hodges, Dr. Bordendorfer, and Dr. Castleberry will all be providing educational for our practitioners, as well as the applicable nursing staff, depending on which they're providing. We do LDI, which is a leadership development class. And so we bring the department managers together approximately 2 times a year, depending on opportunities that are available to us. And we just are hoping to promote the leadership within those persons. We do forums approximately 4 times a year. And so that provides us an opportunity to explain to employees what's going on at Myrtue and give them, we just did a kind of a yoga one and people just loved it. So. And BLS is also provided, and we do that for both our employees and persons outside of Myrtue. So that's a service that we are providing for others. So we have the education committee. This isn't actually a new service, but it's a service that we've been providing. Everybody has a budget for education, but if you need something that's above and beyond what you had already budgeted. So we currently have somebody who wants to go to a nurse manager class. Well, they weren't a manager 6 months ago when we put the budget together. Now they are. They want them to take this leadership class. And so it's that type of stuff that they're applying for. AHA, so that's all that acute cardiac life support stuff. We're streamlining the process so that we can more timely give out cards. We have a new hire day. And so we used to just, whenever somebody started, they started. Now they all start on a Tuesday, the first or third Tuesday of the month. And all of them are welcomed. Joey does the class. We have cards that welcome them. We give them a Myrtue shirt. They are just felt, people really enjoy that portion of it. And then they are given a tour of the facility, and then they usually eat lunch with their manager that day. We have also taken over the employee wellness program. So that has moved to a new system. Same company, they have updated their system. And so all of that is changing. Joey's learning the new thing, and that will kick off. November is when we'll start being able to use their system for our employees. We do lunch and learns 1 to 2 times a month. And so that is just an opportunity for any of our employees to come. We do diabetic education, cardiac, Joey wants to do one about flowers. I don't know. So just a wide assortment of things that would be interesting to different people. We do have mandatory reporter class, so anybody who could come in contact with patients, pretty much anybody who works in this building, not the Peterson Family Wellness Center, has to do this every 3 years. It is now an online class, and so that has been a big adjustment for our employees. We're getting there. It's our first time starting to renew with those people. And then we are doing quite a bit of collaboration with the Sheriff's Office right now. They've been a really good resource. So we obviously have safety protocols in place for our patients and our staff, say tornado drills. And so they're giving us ideas of where we should be going, safety for our patients and our employees. We have a bunch of upcoming classes, but the bottom line is we just keep wanting to offer educational opportunities to our staff. Pediatrics 101, I think, is one of the ones that I think of the most, where our staff, we don't see all that many pediatric patients, and so we want to keep them up to date and knowledgeable, and this is the way that we can do that. The education department can provide that. What questions does anybody have?
Questions, Kara? Thank you.
All right, have a great morning.
You too.
Christy?
I think mine's pretty short and sweet. Are you changing the screen?
I just changed that one.
So fiscal services is what we call our department, which we're small but mighty. So Brenda Fries is our accounting supervisor. Brenda's been with the hospital for over 40 years. She's going to celebrate her 40th year anniversary. She helps basically if Brenda Conrad or Ashley for payroll has any questions, she's supervising them directly in case they can't get to me. But she's handles both for the Myrtue Medical Center and the Shelby County Medical Corporation. She does all the books for both of those. Brenda Conrad, she's our accounts payable clerk. She's been here for 34 years, and she is the most meticulous person I've ever met in my life. If everything's in order for what she does, she has a lot of interaction with every department manager, talking, going through invoices, working with vendors. If something's wrong with an invoice, she absolutely makes sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed. Make sure that all of our invoices, our system goes through. If somebody puts an invoice in for something, all of us have spending limits, and it goes to, and the system automatically emails the manager and says, are you okay with this? We have to approve it in the system. If it's over that manager's spending limit, it goes to their one-up, like Karen a lot in the clinical departments, and if it's over her spending limit, it gets all the way to Barry. It's all done electronically, recorded in the system, and it's very auditable for our auditors to look at to make sure we're in compliance with our procedures. Ashley Schneider, she is our payroll specialist, does an excellent job, works a lot with HR and making sure that payroll is correct. I've never in all the years been here had people complain about payroll not being right or anything. She just does an absolutely excellent job. She helps a lot with doing our cash deposits every day, cash reconciliation. So she works a little bit of both in the accounting area and the payroll specialist. And you don't need to see a picture of me over here. So I've been here 9.5 years. So we're a small department. Like I said, we're mighty, and we have a lot of experience. We have 96 years of experience in our department. So we'll be looking to, I would assume in the next few years, trying to do some planning for succession down the road here. So any questions? Just kind of short and sweet. We don't do a lot of glamorous things in our department, but they're important, so thank you.
Thank you, Christy. All right, at this time, let's call the meeting to order. If we could get an approval of the minutes from August 12th.
I'll move. Or I'll second.
Thank you. Jim, motion, and Terry, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Karen, it looks like you're up to do the medical staff meeting summary.
All right, good morning. Dr. Markham was in the air this morning with patients. So medical staff met on September 13th. They welcomed Dr. Leroy Hodges, our new surgeon, to the medical staff. Welcome, are very happy to have him on board. Quality improvement reports were reviewed by Laura. Adam Porter, one of our pharmacists, met with the medical staff and gave some education on sepsis as well as chemical restraints. Talked a little bit about the bivalent vaccine for Omicron variant. Those are available now through public health. Medical staff were encouraged to get theirs and encourage their patients to get that vaccine. We reviewed joint conference and infection control meetings. Tina Holdsworth joined the medical staff and talked about our MMC home health and hospice and the services that they can offer to their patients. Lena Johnson is our new CRNA in the surgery department, so she was introduced to the medical staff, kind of a face with a name, so when they work with her, they'll know what she looks like. Kylie Martin is a student over at the Rural Health Clinic, and she is working on her doctorate project and reviewed that regarding autism screening, and she reviewed that with the medical staff. That's pretty much it.
Okay, straightforward. Any questions for Karen? All right, Laura, the quality improvement report for the month.
Cardiac rehab monitored the goals assessed on dismissal, which was 94% for the fiscal year, and assuring that the discharge exercise plan was completed, which was 97%. For diabetic education, they monitor those hemoglobin A1C numbers before education and after education. We want that number to be down. So prior to getting the diabetic education, it's at 9.1%, and 3 months after receiving education from Jan, it went down to 7.7%. So that was a really good drop. Diagnostic imaging monitored the rescan rates. We want that to be below the national average of 6%, and we were at 4.6%. The emergency department monitored transfers. We had 77 transfers for the quarter, all had 100% of transfer communication. We are also doing an EMTALA focus study currently right now through the ER. Environmental services monitored emptying of sharps containers and laundry bags with a focus on injury prevention for staff. Infection control reported no catheter-associated urinary tract infections and no healthcare acquired infections. And lab reported that 100% of cross-matched units were transfused. So that's where we want to be there. In the packets, I believe on page 8 to 10 is the compliance summary for fiscal year 21-22. It just highlights each department and what their focus is for that compliance for that fiscal year. We continue to conduct ongoing training and education and internal monitoring and auditing. We meet every other month for that, and I believe we need an approval of this compliance summary for that past fiscal year.
All right, if we could get a motion to approve the compliance annual summary. Mike moves, second please.
I'll second. Tom.
Tom, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, Karen.
All right, joint conference committee. So we met on August 2nd for joint conference committee, reviewing the policy and procedure manuals. So again, we divide out throughout the year all of the departments. So this is a fourth of the departments where we review their entire policy and procedure manuals. And then we do review the policies and procedures that are new from the previous meeting. So just a real quick run through, anesthesia, again, COVID is a big one that has changes to their policies. Dietary moved to the new 13th edition of the Simplified Dietary Manual. Home health had added the discharge summary sent out to physicians within 5 business days, was a change for them. Human resources had quite a few policies and procedures, a lot of them related to COVID, and then also employee retention incentives that they're working on. Nursing administration, again, a lot of policies were changed. Most of them were minor changes, correcting like job titles or a few revisions, so nothing major there. And then that's pretty much for the policies and procedures full manuals. Then going into the policies and procedures that have just changed the last quarter, we have diagnostic imaging. They are had some changes to their paracentesis, thoracentesis scheduling process. Used to be done in DI, now it's done in the outpatient clinic, so a little change there. And contrast media reaction, had some changes to those policies. Infection prevention, always COVID, so don't need to say any more there. Public health had some lead screening policy and procedure changes with their testing. And then in our safety manual, our severe weather policy, we did a few changes with that through the spring there. So nothing real major, but we do need an approval for that. Mike and Kelly are on that committee, and I passed around the book that actually have the full changes to those policies and procedures if anyone wants to review those in detail.
Okay, motion to approve the Joint Conference Committee policy and procedure revisions as presented.
So moved.
Jim, second please.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, Jim, it looks like you're going to present the Personnel Committee report.
Yes, we had a meeting this morning at 7 o'clock. There are no initial appointments. We had 20 reappointments and 5 voluntary withdrawals. And they all looked fine.
Okay,
I would make a motion to approve those.
all right, motion.
I'll second that approval.
Thank you, Terry. Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Barry, we've traveled down to the CEO reporting room.
So I want to go over the organizational goals. As you all know, we set organizational goals up at the beginning of the year, and that are basically designed to basically get us to our mission and further our mission. These are the things that we think we need to do to be successful as an organization. So we set them up at the beginning of the year, monitor them throughout the year, and then we look at our results at the end of the year. We also have, each department has their own set of departmental goals that are aligned with these organizational goals. And we do have a scoring system on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. You're very familiar with this. We have our pillars: community, finance, growth, people, quality, and service. Have a goal under each one of those. These have stayed the same pretty much over the last few years. But you can see what our overall score has been the last 5 years. This year we're at a 4.15. So dropped down a little bit from the previous year, but still pretty strong year. So community, our goal is to have volunteer hours, staff volunteer a certain number of hours. 6,000 was our goal. We had over 7,500 hours volunteered throughout the community. So that was a score of 4. And as you recall, we do weight each of these goals differently. This one's weighted at 5%. Finance, this goal is weighted at 20%. You can see how we've done over the last few years. We've focused on having a positive operating margin, not including the IPERS adjustment. This current year, we are going to have a huge positive IPERS adjustment. So when we have the auditors here next week or next month, it's going to look like we had this phenomenal year financially, because I think it's about a $2.5 million paper adjustment, positive. But in reality, we had an operating loss of about $449,000 for the year. That $2.5 million positive adjustment that we have this year will probably reverse itself next year. So we try to just ignore it as much as possible, but because it really doesn't mean anything for our operations, for our finances, for really anything that we do. So we did that was a score of 1. In order to meet our goal, we needed to be at a positive operating margin. So we did not meet that goal. Growth, we had 31 new services this year, which was a score of 5. You've had a chance to kind of look through those. I sent this out in advance. These don't have to be new patient services. We have a lot of departments that don't provide clinical services, but yet they're providing services to each other, to other departments. So those are very important as well. So you've had a chance to kind of look at that. People, we do a patient employee satisfaction survey once a year, and our goal was to have 90% positive responses. This year they were 94% positive, so that was a 5 also. Quality, we look at these core measures. We have about 80 or 90 different measures that we look at, and we want to exceed the benchmark on more than 70% of them. This year we exceeded the benchmark on 92% of those core measures. And again, that was a 5. And Laura kind of pulls this all together, so she's kind of the expert on if there were any questions about this. Again, you had a chance to review this. There's obviously a lot of data here. I won't spend any time going through it in detail. But yeah, 85 out of 92 of those core measures, it's actually 92 measures that we're looking at, but 85 out of 92 exceeded our benchmark.
Our staff should be commended for that.
Yes.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
That is good.
And then this one as well, staff should be commended for this one as well. This is patient satisfaction. So we have several surveys,
Yes.
patient satisfaction surveys that we send out throughout the organization, and our goal is to have more than 85% of the responses be either a 9 or a 10 on a 10-point scale. So we had 93% of those were either a 9 or a 10 this last year. So again, that was a 5.
Nice job.
So everything, all these goals we did very well except for the finance goal. Moving on to next year, and I would like to get approval from the board to approve these goals for 2023. We're keeping the community growth, quality, and service the same. We are looking at changing the finance goal. We've always had a focus on operating, our operating margin. We are very concerned that with the increase in the cost structure, inflation, and what we're going to have to do to retain staff, what we've done over the last year and what we're going to have to do moving forward to retain staff, that it's going to be a lot more difficult to have a positive operating margin moving forward. So we'd like to change this goal to focus on all sources of revenue. So that would include our non-operating revenue, which includes tax revenue, investment income. Investment income, obviously we haven't done very well on that this last year, but normally that's a positive for us. And then grant, there's a lot of commingling of operating versus non-operating when it comes to grants, and we're getting more and more grants. But a lot of times the expenses related to those grants end up as operating, and the revenue ends up as non-operating. So we think this is maybe a little bit better measure. So what we'd like to set the goal at is $1.4 million bottom line, basically, or increase in net position. And again, we don't want to consider the IPERS adjustment. We will remove that from whatever our results are. The other change would be with people. We wanted to add a goal. We're going to keep the employee satisfaction goal, but we want to add a goal for employee retention. You know, one of the biggest challenges everyone's having that have staff is maintaining staff and retaining staff. So we really want to put a focus, and it's not like this hasn't been a focus, it's always been a focus, but we are going to make it one of our organizational goals moving forward. And we have a set of tactics that we use for all of these goals, and I'm not going to, I keep it fairly high level for the board, but one of the tactics obviously is pay. And so we'll be talking more about that when we get to October, November timeframe as we evaluate raises for January 1. So those really are the changes, just finance and people. So I would like to get approval from the board, unless you have some questions about this. I would like to get approval for our 2023 organizational goals.
I just got one quick question, Barry. On the community, under the volunteer hours, 6,000, we attained 7,500 in 2022 and achieved a 4. What do we have to do to get a 5 there, since they're 1,500 hours over the benchmark?
I think it's 8,000 is what our goal is to get a 5. I think it goes 6,000 for a 3, 7,000 for a 4, 8,000 for a 5. Pretty sure that's
Close. Very close.
And those are documented hours. We have each department head kind of track what the what their department's done with community volunteer hours. So,
I would just also add, I'm always surprised that we're able to continue to add new services every year.
I mean, and that's just the idea of continued improvement.
Sure.
I mean, a mindset of improvement is why that goal is there. I think it just helps us focus on improving our services.
I would agree. All right, well, thank you, Barry. We need an approval on the organizational goals that he presented for fiscal '23.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Second, please. Mike, seconds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign.
So we did have a planning session with our medical staff last week, and our senior admin team was there. Terry facilitated that. Janine also sat in on that session. We did have a follow-up meeting yesterday with the medical staff, just to, real summary of that. We talked, it was mainly focused on our practice model, and we've always had a full scope approach, which means that most of our providers work in the rural health clinic. They round on inpatients, they round on nursing home patients, they a lot of times cover in the ER, some of them provide OB services. So we talked about that quite a bit. I think we came to the conclusion, or have always believed, that that's the best model for patient care. I think we reaffirmed that at that meeting. We do want to continue that approach as opposed to trying to specialize, which there are a lot of hospitals that have moved to more specializing, where a provider maybe only works in the rural health clinic, or maybe only does inpatient care, so that would be called a hospitalist. So we really feel like we want to continue the current model, although we understand that there could be some question about the sustainability of that long term, just because of the difficulty of recruiting new providers that want to do everything like what we have right now. But we think that we're in a good position, and I kind of did a survey of all of the practitioners, trying to understand what their desired practice was, and we still have a lot of our providers want to continue that full scope practice, and so we're still in a good position to be able to continue that approach. But we did look at our long term. We looked at the age of our providers and looked at what we need long term. So we are going to start recruiting for a family practice physician that will do OB. So that's something we'll start that process right away. There was discussion about an urgent care or quick care clinic. So we're going to evaluate that moving forward. Some discussion about staffing, recruitment and retention with nurses and other clinical staff. Nurse training was brought up. So those are some of the areas that we're going to look at moving forward. So I think that's kind of a summary of what we talked about. I don't know, Terry, if you have any comments.
No, I think that is the accurate summary of what we heard, and it was a robust discussion, and it was a pleasure to work with that group again, so thank you, Barry.
Okay, so the next area we want to talk about is our emergency room expansion, and we have the far to the left is Ken McCormick. He's with Murray Company. He's our construction manager. And then Dwayne Meyer and Evan Lamprecht. I think they both met. I think you've been in a board meeting, haven't you?
We actually talked about this, and I thought we had, but he reminded me that it was a group of physicians.
Okay.
This is our first one. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So they're both with Altus, our architects. And so we want to give you an update on where we are with the planning, or the schematics, the design of our current ED expansion and renovation. So back when we applied for a USDA grant back in, I think it was about October of last year, This was the information that we had in front of us, and this was put together by a different architect, Shive Hatter. We've since moved on to Altus, but this is the information that we had at that time, and it was based on kind of our master facility plan. There wasn't a lot of detailed work put into this, but there was some. And the estimated construction cost was about $4 million, architect fees of about $400,000, renovation of 3,500 square feet, and then expansion of 2,500. So that's what we were working with back when we did the grant application, and also when we, in March, we asked to hire Altus on, and got approval to hire Altus to begin the work, architect work on this expansion. And that's what this, and we presented this numerous times, but we said that this could change, and it has changed quite a bit from the work that's been done over the last 4 to 5 months. This is the new design, and I'm going to let Evan and Dwayne talk about this, but I kind of wanted to get through my little part of this. But this is the new design. It goes north instead of south. The cost has gone up significantly. Construction cost of $7 million. We have more space that is going to be renovated, and more space, more expansion as well. So the construction cost did go up, architect fees would go up. We're estimating equipment cost right now, so the total with all those things around $7.8 million. We do have the $1 million USDA grant that we will get that will go towards that cost. So, and then here, you know, I think I'll just let Evan and Dwayne talk at this point and kind of take us through their process. We did meet with the Building and Grounds Committee yesterday with the three, Altus and Murray, and kind of went through this in detail. I don't know that we need to go into as much detail today, but kind of want to get the rest of the board a feeling for the work that's been done and kind of where we're at. So I would turn it over to Evan and Dwayne then.
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. I'm Evan Lamprecht I'm a partner with Altus Architectural Studios. We appreciate the opportunity to be working on this project. It's been an enjoyable experience thus far to get to this point. Taking everyone back to when Altus was brought on board. First of all, Altus specializes in, our portfolio is probably 95% healthcare. So this is what we do all across the Midwest, in Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, and north and south of that as well. So every project we bring on of this scale, we bring on an independent programmer. On this project, we opted to bring in Halsa out of Minneapolis. They specialize in looking at the data, your census data, both data that's available here at the hospital as well as with the state, to understand how many patients are visiting your emergency department, where are they coming from, potentially if you have some members of your zip code that are going to other hospitals for various reasons, but specific to emergency departments. And we like to bring them on because we don't want to undersize or oversize your department. And we like to actually bring on a third party, so that's outside of our opinion, and have somebody that focuses on just this and arrive at a set of rooms and a set of constraints that helps us guide us to move forward. Because the last thing we want to do is build something that's too small that you have to add on to again in a few years, or the contrary is too big and you're not utilizing all your rooms and you just build too much space. So we start with that, and of course worked with the ED team to validate those numbers based upon what they were seeing. And where we arrived is what you see on the screen today. We have on the left side of the plan, there's a triage room, and there are 4 treatment rooms. The 2 in the middle are behavioral health rooms. So in those rooms, there'll be a garage door set up, an overhead coiling door that can drop down if you have patients that you want to make sure that you're concealing the med gases as well as some of the cabinetry, just to protect themselves as well as your staff. And you'll see those are a little bit larger, and they have a observation window looking into them. And then on the right side of the plan, plan east, there's 2 procedure rooms as well as 2 trauma rooms. And then as you work down towards the bottom of the plan, there's various support that's required for emergency department. There's some guiding principles that we have to abide by as healthcare architects, which is called FGI, Facility Guidelines Institute, which tells us you're going to need a soiled room, a clean room, how big it needs to be, what it needs to have in it. So that's, we have those parameters that we make sure that we're checking all those boxes on all of our projects. But after, I should have started with, before we got into this plan, we actually looked at a design that went south. This one's going north, expansion versus south. The previous example that was included in the grant proposed going south. And we wanted to evaluate that, and and then we realized this one had some pros, some cons. North had some pros, some cons, and then you start to weigh out which one rises to the top. And some of the biggest cons of this approach going south was the infrastructure. You have a lot of infrastructure going from your physical plant out to your new CUP project. That would be disrupted if we decided to go that direction. The other item that we talked through a little bit yesterday was your grades. As you move from the corner, the top corner by your physical plant down to the street, you have significant drop off. And if we want to get this floor to align with your existing floor, it's difficult to do that because we have to raise all of that up, which is just time and effort and of course costs associated. So we took both of those to a schematic level and ultimately decided on the north option for a variety of different reasons. Dwayne, I'll turn it over to you to talk through some of the goals that were defined.
Yeah, first, typically when we start a project, we'll work with your group and really understand why you want to do a project, or specifically this project. So some of the goals that were mentioned or identified early on, and then when we look at decisions that need to be made, these goals really reflect what direction we tend to go with the project. So some of the goals that were identified was we wanted to improve the wayfinding on the site or to the site to the actual ambulatory door. So we wanted to improve that. As you know now, that entrance on the north side, that existing entrance is kind of tucked back in there. It's hard to find. So we wanted to improve that visibility. One of the other things that we wanted to do was improve nursing sight lines to exam treatment rooms. Right where they are now it's a little bit to the west of your 2 trauma rooms. We like to get those nursing stations directly in front of those rooms, and then visibility to the other treatment rooms. One of the other goals that we try to achieve when we look at a project like this is where your patients, visitors are coming in, family members, and then giving them access from the ED back to the hospital. And you can see that we've done that with this option. One of the other things with expanding south is we weren't seeing that, and so that didn't provide that access for visitors or family members to get back to the hospital without going through the department. So that was another goal that we wanted to try and achieve with this project. Trying to think of some of the other ones. I think maintain patient safety, improve basically your nursing flow throughout the department. Currently, your ED department is really more rectilinear in plan, and when we look at an ED specifically, we try to square that up or give it more of a square plan to improve those efficiencies as well as those sight lines. So those are kind of the two basic design, a few of the design principles that we try to achieve when we look at maybe an ED specifically. Trying to think of
I think we covered it.
other things that we looked at. A couple of other things that I'll mention. We did look at several site options and how the site would be impacted. When we looked at the south expansion or the south addition, we recognized, I think, that there was some challenges with entering the site from the east or from 12th Street with entering at that level, at that street level, and getting up to first level or elevation, what we often call 100. So it was about 8, 10, 12 feet when you get down to that intersection. So that was going to be a challenge just to get vehicular parking and street access up to that level. So we felt like expanding north maybe made the most sense at that time. And I think as we looked further into it with different options, it became pretty clear that that's where it needed to go. A couple of the other constraints that we were working with, the existing garage, which we wanted to try and maintain and leave in place without removing and replacing. The existing helipad to the east of that, and then your current ongoing project for the utility farm just south of the helipads. Those were some other constraints. Another item that we were working around was the mobile imaging truck. So that was another thing that we were looking at. As you move to the north of the site, one of the other challenges was dietary has receiving there to the north, as well as trash pickup. So those were some constraints and some challenges that we had identified. And I think later in the process, as we were looking at the addition to the north and some of your longer term goals, we looked at how imaging could possibly expand to the east, and we felt like if we expanded south with this addition, there would be some constraints in possibly expanding imaging to the east. So we felt like this was probably a better option, and I think it achieved pretty much all of the goals that we had established early on with the group.
So really the reason we're meeting today is to give you the information on the cost estimate that we just got here last week. And it's more than what we had put in front of you in the past. So we want to really kind of reapprove moving forward with the rest of the design. I do want Ken to talk just a little bit about the cost estimating process and maybe some reasons why. You know, we knew that the cost was going to be more because we've got more square footage than what we had originally, but the cost per square foot has gone up quite a bit as well. So maybe Ken, you can speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So just to introduce myself, I'm Ken McCormick. I'm Vice President of Murray Company out of Des Moines. Really appreciate being able to be here this morning and just work through this with you. But so Dwayne and Evan have already kind of hit on this, but just the evolution of the design as it goes and trying to pick up and fill in kind of the gaps there, because at a schematic level, you know, not all the details are figured out. Every time we meet with the user groups, there's, oh, we think we need this or we think we need that. And so we've tried to pick up and balance between kind of the needs and the wants there. But as this project has evolved and since that last budget that was approved, I think just some things to note that have kind of developed is, not to mention the square footage, but the site on the north side is also a pretty challenging site. It has some bad soil that's going to have to be remediated and taken care of as part of that, but a pneumatic tube system, some work in the ambulance garage, some work on the helipad, and then the way that the new building connects to the old basically makes us tear the structure out of the old, support it all, rebuild the steel structure, and then go north, right, correct? Right, yeah, north. And it creates that flow and that you saw on that drawing that gives you that efficient space. Yeah, so you don't really know when you're in there that you're walking from a building that's 30, 40 years old, 50 years old into a brand new facility. It's kind of seamless and flows, and it's designed efficiently because it's designed as if it was all built at once. But it does take a lot of structural work to make that happen, because there is quite a few structural walls. There's the structure on the north side gets tore back into where registration and the lobby is now. We basically take that part of the building off and then rebuild it as we go out. It's just a function of how it was built before that makes that happen. Also the phasing, so working through just how do we keep you in operation and limit the amount of disruption that happens to your staff, to your patients, to just the services that you offer the community out of this area. I mean, normally 8,500 square foot, we're probably messing around with for 8 months. This is taking us 18 and a half months right now, and time is money for everybody. So remobilizations for subcontractors, just the duration of how long everyone has to be here contributes to driving that cost up. I talked about the site a little bit, and I know the site's messy on both sides, so I'm not sure it's changing the cost a lot, but it does contribute to the square foot cost that Barry referenced. And then we talked about the complicated structure, but also the look that you get when you're done, the signage element that's a piece of this is quite the upgrade to the facade of where we're building there. The escalation piece, so just a couple bullet points, and most of you guys probably know all this stuff. Everybody goes to the grocery store and stuff and sees what happens, but steel and copper, they've doubled in the last year. Concrete has increased by somewhere between 30 and 40%, and 3 out of the last 4 months it's gone up $7 a cubic yard just each month. Skilled labor is one of the things that we're really getting stretched on, and especially when we get to rural communities. So, we're not able to build this in the quality that you need by using residential contractors and just a guy with a hammer. It just doesn't work that way. So that does drive costs. Also, and we talked about this yesterday a little bit, there is some contingency built into this just because of the level of the design that we're at. We're at a very schematic level. As the details get added, we just need to make sure that we're able to cover those. So there's a design contingency that's calculated at 10% of the cost of the work. And then we also have inflation at 3%, and that inflation is just to get us through the buyout. So get us from where we are right now to completely design and bid it out and sign contracts with subcontractors. We're using a 3% inflation factor right there. Now, we don't have a crystal ball, but all of our indicators tell us that that's the proper amount to have for that time span. Things happen sometimes that affect that up and down. And inflation is seeming to level out a little bit right now on construction materials and construction labor. It's not going up like it was 6 months ago. So that's a good sign. And then there's also a project contingency in there. When you go to a CM at-risk delivery system, that CM usually holds a project contingency. Now, it's not our money to spend. It's for unforeseens, and especially in renovations of older buildings where maybe you don't have perfect as-built drawings, and these guys aren't able to verify every piece and part. There's some elevation change in the floor, or we open up a wall and there's a steel brace, a wind brace there, or something like that no one knew about. That's what that contingency is for, but we don't spend that contingency without your approval. So it would be reviewed with Barry, Jeff, Drew, whoever we decide that the kind of the lead point is there for the hospital. And as we go through this design and get this project set up, that'll all get figured out. There's also a considerable amount of value engineering, or we call them smart choices, because value engineering has a negative connotation of we're just taking stuff away to cut cost. And we would rather look at it as how do you add value? So sometimes that takes cost away, sometimes adding value might cost you more initially, but it has a payback. And so we like to look at things as more like a return on investment type of approach. But we are working through that process right now with the leadership of the hospital and with the design team. And I feel confident we're going to be able to knock some money out of this, just as in combination with as the site gets developed and the structure gets developed a little bit more, and we kind of refine the look just so slightly, not the look that you've approved, but maybe the height of the tower and maybe the actual square foot of metal panels compared to masonry and that kind of stuff. There's lots of things that we can look at to go through that. And then on the side, there's some retaining walls and bad soil and stuff like that just kind of needs to be quantified and verified and not have us make quite so many assumptions as we have to do at SD. As we get through design development, those details will start to get figured out, and the contingency percentages will go down, and we'll start honing in on it a little bit more.
And I think I'll add something to that. I think as we look at these things that we can maybe reduce or pull dollars out, it's important when we start this project why we establish those project goals, because those decisions that you guys will ultimately make will hinge back to those goals, those overarching goals of why we're doing the project, and those decisions support that design. So it's important to go back to those goals. But the other thing I'll mention too is where we're building this, your existing EV, your waiting area in that AG was done in 1964. And then there was an addition done just to the east of that. And then the last one in 2003, which is your current ambulance garage, and some renovation. But all of that was essentially built with load-bearing walls, which is challenging when you're doing a renovation or an expansion, because ultimately you'll have to address those. It's either load-bearing walls or columns and beams. And we like to typically do, in healthcare, columns and beams to support flexibility in the future. So that's the other thing that's kind of, I think, impacting some of those costs in the renovation area.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? Any questions for the team? So we've had Karen, Jenny have been involved in this process, Christy, Jeff, myself, Drew. I don't know if any of you have any comments about the process. The reason we're talking today about it is we have the new cost numbers, and it's higher than what we've put in front of you in the past. So I don't want to continue through this design process and get to November and then spring this on you. So we just got this information a week or 10 days ago, I think. I guess I would like approval from the board to continue on with this design and continue on with this project, knowing these new numbers. So that's what I'm asking for.
I have a question. Barry, on the $1 million USDA grant based on the old construction costs going south. Is there more monies available since it's more square footage, more cost? Is that $1 million? Can we, or do we need to get approval from the USDA to change the plan?
There's not going to be more money available. It'll be the $1 million regardless of the cost. We have to keep them involved all the way through this process. Christie's done more, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so they've been involved, and Jeff's forwarded all the contracts. They have to approve all the contracts and make sure we're going through the proper approval processes and stuff. So they've been involved all the way through this design phase and contracting.
They approved our process for Murray and Altus both, so before we could move forward with them, they had to agree. So they're involved. They get to participate in all of the decision making once we get the plan done, because they're the ones that will end up paying for $1 million worth of this project.
We'll go through the financial statements and everything next, but just to answer a question about where does funding come from, as you see as we go through there, we have reserves that will cover the cost of the project.
Good to know. All right, I believe, excuse me, I believe Barry has asked for approval to continue with the detailed design of the emergency.
I commend them for their work on this so far. This is more detailed than we've had
Yes,
any other time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
yeah, thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Yep.
That detail will continue to increase.
Okay.
Good,
I'll make a motion to approve, to move
I'll
forward.
second it.
thank you. We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Barry, the update on the central utilities?
Jeff?
Jeff?
Yeah,
Take that.
we're moving forward. August 31st was the date of target for significant completion. We have not met that. So there is a penalty, a daily penalty that is being assessed towards graphite, but progress continues to be made. All of the new boilers are up and running as of Friday last week. So for about 3 weeks, we were running on one boiler to supply all the heat to the facility. Now we have 3 that are synchronized that will supply the heat. Timing's perfect moving into the cooler weather. There are a couple, obviously the cooling has been on since April, so the current facility, most of the current facility is on the new heating and cooling equipment. There are a couple hot water loops that for heating that have to be hooked up. One is to the rural health clinic, and I believe that is set to be done on Saturday this week. So we're getting very, very close to everything being supplied by the new equipment. What's left after that internally is they have started the destruction of the old boiler, so it's a third demoed. This one's a little bit more challenging than the first one because they have to cut them cut up in such a size that an individual can carry a piece out, where before they had a telehandler and they could move the forks underneath, cut off a big section and haul that out. This is just further in and there's more equipment in front. So that's going to be nice. It should be completely removed by next week. Then after, what the next step has to occur is some concrete work inside the facility to pour a pad for the water softeners and the diagnostic imaging heat or air handler that's currently sitting outside. And then once the water softeners are in, the air handler will move, and within the next probably month and a half, give or take a little bit, all of that should be completed. They continue to demo the abandoned pipes throughout the facility as they install new equipment. The big thing out west on the east lot, as you notice, the south wall was completely removed because it wasn't square, it had lots of issues. So they're currently drilling in new re-rod, epoxying that, and will be putting up a new wall there. The east wall is just as bad, and more than likely, we're still under discussions, but more than likely that'll be removed and replaced. It's in places in 4 feet, about 5 inches out of plumb. So to try and put a vertical decorative fence above that and get it straight and stable is beyond an extreme challenge. The other 2 walls we can use. There'll be some polishing to the top so that it's a nice smooth finish, but there's still some work out there. As part of that, there will be the piers for the propane tank. We need to have that installed so we can get our second source of fuel, synthetic natural gas made out of propane. So we continue to move. We're within a couple months of being done. So what questions do you have?
Are you likely to get paid on the penalty?
It will be deducted out of the pay app. So as the pay app goes to SES, who approves them, they will then take the dollar amount and deduct that off of the pay app. So that'll be an outflow that isn't going to occur.
The cost of the rework will be on graphite.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah.
If they covered the walls and the...
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
Okay, Christie?
We just need to add Huff and Zacconi to our depository resolution. And I tell you 4 million, Ruth, is that correct? 3, 4? 3. Okay, so 3 million. We've had Berkshire Hathaway stock that was donated to the organization a long time ago with them. And we also want to utilize them a little bit more and trying to find some short-term CDs at better rates, those type of things. So we just want to add them to our depository resolution. So we just need a motion to add them.
Can you get a motion to add Huff and Zacconi? Mike moves, second, please.
I'll second. Okay.
Motion and a second, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Financial statements?
So we handed out the July and August financial statements. They go out a little bit later. We finished our audit. They'll be out in October to meet with the finance committee and present to the board. So I'll let you just look at July's. August consolidated is up there on the screen. And as you can see, July and August are usually 2 months that are a little bit lower than normal. We have had some, it seems that we had a little bit more vacations and providers off in the month of July and August. So as you can see, August of 2022 and outpatient visits is down quite a bit from they were in 2021. ER visits remain about consistent with what they were last year. Surgical procedures are down a little bit there too, from down to 98 compared to 127. The physician clinic visits, which is the RHC, is down there quite a bit too. And then the behavioral health, we started to break that out separately this year because behavioral health is a pretty robust department. And so to break it out from just, they were previously included in outpatient visits. So there again, you can see we're down a little bit there in the month of August. 7.9 average daily census in August compared to 10 last year. We had 3 births this year compared to 11 last year. For the month of August then, we had a negative 152,751 in net income from all sources compared to 217 last year. Significant portion of that into that non-operating is our investments. We record market value increases and decreases monthly. Going to year-to-date, we are pretty consistent year-to-date from the first 2 months of 2022 compared to the first 2 months of 2021 fiscal year. In most of the areas, surgeries are still down a little bit. Physician clinic visits are down a little bit. Behavioral health. Daily census is pretty close, 8.74 compared to 9.39 last year. Operations-wise, we've had a little bit slower start this year. So we are at a negative 95,000 there year-to-date compared to 468 last year. Just the next one is it. So this again is the 4-year comparison there. As you can see, pretty consistent across the board. See the dip down in 2020 when we hit COVID. A little bit, you know, everybody rebounded there in 2021 when people got out and about again. And where we are now, physician clinic visits there are down a little bit for the RHC, so we'll continue to monitor those. But as you can see there, we've had some ups and downs with COVID financially. went from a $300,000 net gain from all sources in 2019 to a negative $480,000 in 2020, back up to $468,000. A lot of that federal funding and investments. And then now we're at $95,580. Again, the balance sheet is in the packet that you have there. We currently have $28 million in short-term cash equivalents and investments. So those are our reserves. We also have $1.2 million that's set aside to fund our self-insured health insurance plan. So that is a designated fund, not available for just general operations, but did want you to know that those funds are set aside for those things. The current liabilities remain consistent. We continue to pay down our advances in third-party payers. So Medicare gave advances during COVID, and then they take out money each month that for every payment that we get paid for Medicare now, and that has to be paid back within, I believe we still have about a year left of that. But that's all been figured into any cash flow analysis for the project that we've talked about today here too. Any questions?
Are there any questions on the reports?
I have a serious question. Christie, I'm impressed with your ability to forecast out to 21, 22 on the right-hand column. Good job. We're looking good 100 years from now.
I won't be here, so.
Me neither.
I'm not sure any of us will be. All right, if I could get a motion on the monthly financials.
I'll move the approval of the monthly financials.
Thank you, Terry. A second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Payroll and claims are in your packet. Any questions for Christie? If not,
I'll make a motion to approve.
thank you, Jim. We have a motion. Second, please. Mike seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, at this time, we need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll move to closed session.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion and second. We need a roll call vote. Ruth, please.
Roll call.
Aye.
Jim, Mike,
Aye.
Janine, Tom,
Aye.
and Terry. And it is
8:48.
8:48.
48. All right.